Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome everybody to today's Learning Lab, ISTAT Learning Lab. My name is Peter Neckline. I'm with BOC Aviation in Singapore, and I'm an ISTAT Board Director. Today, we're delighted to have with us another fellow ISTAT Board Director, Dr. Adam Pilarski. Now, Adam is well known for more than his good looks. He has considerable experience and a long history in the aviation industry, both and a broad perspective of that. If you think about both the aerospace and airline sector, and is well renowned for his calls on the oil and oil markets and other areas as well. So we thought, from an ISTAT point of view, it'd be great to ask Adam to step up and be willing to take any question from the audience, and he has thankfully agreed to do that. I think there's going to be more of a focus around Adam's perspective as what's going on in the world today and how he feels as we hopefully get towards the end of COVID and an outlook for 2022. But of course, we want this to be driven by audience Q&A, and I want to encourage everybody to submit their questions. Adam and I can have a dialogue for a certain period, but we really love to pose the questions to him that are on the minds of our audience. So we want you to get them into the Q&A box, and you can find that in the bottom of your screens there. Now, Adam, of course, will take any question, but he will reserve the right to answer the question perhaps that should have been asked. But anyway, we will kick off, and I want to encourage you as we go along, please submit your questions so we can have more of a broader community discussion drawing upon Adam's extensive experience. So Adam, welcome to your own ISTAT Learning Lab.
Thank you.
Very good to have you here. Now look, I suppose if we think about coming from my side of the world, I'm in Singapore, and China is obviously a very significant influence on our part of the world, and you have an affiliation or an affinity with China in particular. China's going to be in the news today with the latest breaking news around the Evergrande real estate bankruptcy. I suppose I'm not quite sure the legal status there, but it's certainly a major credit default or credit issue that's arising. How do you see that and the ramifications coming out of all of that?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And agree with Peter, any question is fine. I always have the right to say I'm not going to answer too personal questions, but can be aviation, can be Hunanese food, can be how do you raise kids? Any questions you have, I'm willing to try to answer. I take a long time to answer questions, but answering your question specifically about what's happening today in China, and I think this is really important because I take it as actually the Chinese government takes it in a positive way. What's happening is some people overextended and they cannot handle the financial responsibilities, and the market should punish them. So this is what's happening in the thing that today you see in the news. But it's interesting to go back decades. I've been doing China, maybe that's the wrong term, going to China for probably at least 40 years. And I do remember that in early 80s, traffic in China started growing very fast. And in not only double digits, but over 20% annually. And the Chinese government, to give them credit, at that time, this is early 80s, looked at their plans, and their plans said our traffic will be growing 6.7%. And if the party declared that it's growing 6.7, that must be the truth. So how come traffic is growing over 20% year after year? And we were tasked by Jurongji, who later, at that time was, I think, head of the State Planning Commission, and later became Prime Minister and Mayor of Shanghai. He assigned a number of smart young kids to work with me on the forecast. And some of these people were Chen Fong, who later founded Hainan Airline and became a billionaire. And we actually have no idea what's happening to my old friend Chen Fong now. He's probably in a re-education camp someplace. Yan Shenfa, who is now in Shanghai running Charlie Willis's business in engine leasing. Fu Shula, who later became head of CATEC. And all these people came, and we looked and used Western methods to come with forecasts. And we figured out that traffic actually will not grow 6.7%, but much, much higher levels. And I'll give the Chinese the credit. They actually apparently took our report, which was in English, translated it into Chinese. A number of years later, I was in some place in China, I don't even, Anhui or some of the not super big provinces, and somebody said, wait, you are the famous author of this report. What a report, what are you talking about? They translated it and everybody in aviation saw it. And they adjusted their policies based on it. So it is phenomenal how the traffic grew. And at that time, I would show it to people in the West. And they said, no, you don't understand. They cannot grow that much. That will never happen. Do you realize that if this happens, they will be bigger than United Airlines? Yes, I realize. And people didn't believe me, but eventually reality happened. So they called me a lunatic, and then they promoted me to lucky lunatic because the numbers proved to be right. And a couple of years ago, 1/4 of planes that Boeing was producing was going to China. So huge changes. Now, does it mean that it tells you you have to think in long term, and you have to think about what makes sense. And in 1980, when you looked at the share of Chinese population in the world, the share of Chinese economy in the world, and the share of Chinese traffic, there was a disconnect.
Yes.
And obviously, it was fairly obvious what will happen. So China became El Dorado, the place where you go and find gold and do everything wonderful. And just to be contrary, few years ago, I started saying, wait a second, there are other changes happening in China. And the idea of the Chinese government prohibition of having more than one child per family in the short term, it means that your income per person goes up because income continues, but population slows down. This cannot continue. And I was saying, no, in number of years, things will not be very good. Chinese economy will have to slow down because they don't have enough younger people. And again, it was very obvious to me, and of course the Chinese government now changed their policy. And now they said 2 is good, 3 even better. It's not that easy to do, to tell people, you know, you should have more children because it's good for the economy. I believe, yes, you should, and it's good for many reasons, but that's a separate issue. So China has been growing in phenomenal way and will stop growing in a very expected way. It's not magic. You could predict it. By the way, it doesn't mean China disappears as an important market. I'm just saying it cannot continue going forever. And we knew it, and it happened. By the way, my PhD dissertation, since we are talking about population, was economics of population. And my advisor in school and friend was Julian Simon, who said more children have actually good impact, kind of the anti-Malthusian view. And his books were translated in Chinese. And I remember one time when I was going to China, Julian said, Adam, can you find out, somebody told me that my books were translated in China. I said, they didn't tell you? No. So I actually went to China, found his books, translated in Chinese, and brought them for him. So yes, they had reasonable people. They wanted the other view that said not just one child per family.
Yeah, look, it's exactly right. I mean, as you allude to, China's got a base effect, right? The economy's become so big, there's no way they can continue to grow at sort of 8%, right? Things by definition will slow. But the other part of it is probably an extension of what you're talking about on demographics. It's also urbanization. They are starting to run out of the number of people that are going to be moving into the cities, right? So interesting challenges for them. But just coming back to the Evergrande issue, how big is that, and does it have global implications?
It does. It has an impact, but the same way as Hainan had problems, you have to find a way to, China, have to find a way to deal with. And some people will lose money. I mean, the whole idea of a market economy is that some people win, some don't. You take chances, and if you make the right choice, good things happen to you. But you need also the negative side. If your idea doesn't work, then you should lose money. That's how the market works. And by the way, I mean, after COVID, we have a huge change in the way our life evolves. Because instead of doing things purely theoretically, we are in a period where we try new things. We actually are trying new things, and we will see how they go. And theoretically, we don't know which way it will go. We don't know if airlines that are parking their fleets are making a right strategic decision versus guys who are saying, no, we will continue flying. We'll find out. We don't know how the virus will go. I don't know all the letters of the Greek alphabet, so I don't know what's still coming. And some of it will be luck, some of it will be taking chances. I mean, if we think about our industry, Steve Hazy started leasing. He took chances. And it worked out for him. There are other people who took chances, it didn't work out for them. When you look at history of Pan Am, often they were that close to not making it. FedEx, Fred Smith, same thing. He was very close to being bankrupt before making it big. This is the time where new things will be happening, and new technology in aircraft, new airlines, maybe new ways of dealing with leasing, many things. I think it's a golden opportunity for people who are willing to stake out their claim and try to do something new. And I hope many of you will do it. And wanted to say, try to be lucky. The old American saying, I'd rather be lucky than good, works here, but yeah.
Interesting. Before we move on, because you've kind of touched a little bit on the technology side, which I want to ask you about. But before we do that, there's an audience question looking at the issue. When do you think China will lift travel restrictions and open its borders, at least, open its international borders?
That's a political question, and that will still take some time. They decided to pursue the policy of zero COVID cases. And in the long run, that's not a very wise decision in my view. I play a doctor. I'm the wrong kind of doctor, but I think that they will change probably within half year, and they will realize that the policies that they have are not the most efficient, and instead have vaccinations, have some medication, drugs for when people get sick. So there are other ways of handling it. Xi Jinping doesn't call me every day to ask my advice, unfortunately. But I have a feeling that yes, they will change their mind next year.
I agree with you. Interesting. And I suppose just because it's arrived, another question on the China market. So if China's GDP growth is going to slow, what does that mean for passenger traffic? And will there be a further disconnection between the direction or growth of passenger traffic and GDP in the future?
Yes and yes. I think that right now we are trying to adjust the relationship of, in our mind, of GDP and traffic. And the old ways of GDP grows, hence traffic will grow twice as much. Clearly that didn't work perfectly with the virus and with other outside factors. But I think we have also, and I'm positive you will, or somebody will bring it up, the environmental impact. That also is more of a serious concern and a limiting factor on traffic. So there are other factors that will influence our future traffic. We cannot use the same old models, but we will also, in my view, have a whole bunch of new planes, including my favorite going into high speed. We'll have eventually electric planes, hydrogen planes. Now, I'm not an engineer, luckily. I don't have to work for a living. I just have to invent strange realities. But once people move, the human mind can create wonderful things. And it will go much faster than we believe. And again, I talked about it when I talked about electric cars. And we had decades of same cars, no change. And then suddenly Tesla came about and it changes everything. And this was an outsider. Elon Musk was not GM or Ford.
Yeah,
so will we have some outsider, a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Mr. Ma in China, or somebody that none of us have ever heard of in India or another place? I mean, it doesn't have to be limited to the existing players. And car manufacturing showed us that new people can come in. And I know that there are limitations on it. So electric, I, by the way, don't drive an electric car just because I don't love computers. People who love computers love electric cars because it's basically a giant computer, push the right buttons and so on. But yeah, it's a reality and it will happen. And it is happening. And I think we'll have the same stuff in aviation. We will have new planes. And by the way, you listen to Airbus and Airbus is more vocal about it than other manufacturers, but saying by 35, we'll have very different planes. So things were going boring for decades. Every year it's the same thing. See how we can save another 15 cents a mile per passenger, or 1.5 cents. And nothing major changed. All of a sudden, things are changing, like with cars. New people, new ideas will come in. And I'm very excited about it. I think it will be fantastic. And next time I fly to China, well, no, I hope I'll fly before this, but in a decade, I'll be flying at much higher speed.
Well, we've got to come back to that. But before we do, there's a audience question here from Amelia, looking for your opinion on the eVTOL technology. Do you believe in it, for that matter? When do you think it's going to be commercially viable? And are you confident enough around the returns that you'd actually invest some of your wife's 401k in these technologies?
Okay, number of questions here. One question, yes, I'm fairly upbeat about it. I think that there are a number of players that want to get into that industry, that want to have new technology. And again, my belief is once human race decides to go some way and 7-8 billion people in the world, and the world is all connected now, it's not just a few places in Europe and in the US. We will have new technologies, good things will be happening. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't know exactly when it will happen. Would I put my own money or actually my wife's money, which sounds smarter, probably not, just because the American technical term is I'm a chicken. I'm what we call egghead, the guy who overanalyzes things. I'm not the person who takes big chances. Again, Steve Hazy, if he asked me when he started his business, I would probably say, sounds like a good idea, but I can see a whole bunch of reasons why you shouldn't. And here are all the danger points. That's why Steve is a billionaire. And I've been grossly overpaid for many years, so I'm not starving, but I will never be a billionaire. It takes certain types of people to write about things. It takes certain types of people to make it happen. And I'm, as ISTAT members know, ISTAT Award Winner. And I'm one of the few people that just did the theoretical stuff, the thinking element. Most of the winners were people that actually did things for a living. So the guy who followed me now, the latest one, Abdul Muabari, actually formed a big business and is doing really well. It doesn't mean he couldn't do the intellectual things. And the same, of course, with Steve, who is one of the smartest people I know. But they take chances. This is the time for people to take chances. Please do it. And then I can write articles about how you succeeded and how you saw the future and how it could have been forecast. Will I put my money in? Probably not. In our family, I don't make these decisions anyhow. So
that happens in a lot of households. I know. I'm in one of them. Another question that we have, and this is changing tack a little bit. Yes. Financial results for the operating lease community have been generally good in the eyes of our the person posing the question. Yes. Throughout the pandemic, while the airline customers have been bleeding heavily, is their reference.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
That has been the case for a very long time, where airlines were bleeding, and airlines would say everybody else makes money. The people who produce planes make money. The people who lease the planes to us, the maintenance people, everybody makes money but us airlines. And things started changing last few years, but it was mainly, airlines started making money, but it was mainly because of the US, because US airlines were making money. And that's because we America don't really believe that much in competition. So we had an oligopolistic market, I'm sorry, friends at airlines, and we didn't allow too many newcomers to come in. That will change, and that is changing. Now, leasing companies are around 50% now of the market. And there's a possibility that eventually, if they get much bigger, they will be the ones running airlines. They already have a big input into what kind of planes should be produced, justifiably. So there are interesting ways it can go. And one could be that leasing companies will be owners of airlines. They will hire management, hire staff, provide the planes, and run airlines. And if they do, there isn't, and losses will happen, there isn't an easy way to push it onto airlines. Today, it's fairly easy. Everybody else makes money, and airlines are the buffer. If we lose money, airlines are the ones that lose money.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. If you go to the pre-COVID period, I don't think you could actually have a combined entity with the leverage of a typical lessor at a balance sheet level and the operating leverage of the airline together. Do you know what I mean? You need more stability in the cash flow side to sustain the leverage on the balance sheet side. So we'll see where that goes, but interesting thought. Just moving on to some other questions here. What's your view on the what's referred to as the crossover market, the A220-300, the E195-E2 family?
Right now they are doing, I think, quite well, and as well as anybody does in today's market.
Sure.
But it's an interesting question, what will happen once we have totally new technologies. So right now, if I were a manufacturer, I would think, do I want to spend a lot of money on a totally new plane that does not incorporate all the new technologies? And I would say probably not, because in 15, 20 years, whatever we produce today will be obsolete. Now, I'm not saying it immediately then happens, its values go to zero, and that's why you have, ISTAT has their appraiser program, and we have many wonderful appraisers that can tell you what will happen to values. but we do have to think that we will have totally revolutionary new planes, let's say in 15 years.
Okay, well, when you say totally revolutionary, I do find it interesting. If I think of all of us as we get older, you normally sort of think of life slowing down, but you've within that developed a passion for speed, and you've brought this up as sort of your interest in supersonic aircraft and so forth. So help me understand the issue around speed, given economic constraints, given environmental issues, and all of that in the background. I'd be interested in your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, I think that and speed, when I say I love speed, I don't mean a product, I mean speed of aircraft. It's the Concorde days were a bad story and bad mark on progress, because these were government, this was a government run product.
Sure.
It didn't respond to what people wanted. And I think people would be and are willing to spend substantially more than we spend today. Again, at Austin, not this Austin, the previous Austin ISTAT meeting, I was showing some statistics and what happens to ticket prices. And basically, in 1932, you could fly coast to coast in the US, round trip about $310. It's similar to prices of today. Show me any other product that prices stayed the same for 90 years. It doesn't exist. We we humans took it as given. Oh, well, nobody will be willing to pay more. Wrong. People are willing to pay more. It's speaking about cars again. If you think about Acura or Lexus, they are souped up Honda and Toyota, but they are much more expensive. So what? People realize they are better. They have many positive attributes, and that's why we are willing to spend more money. And that's exactly what will happen in aviation. You will have new products, not government-run products like Concorde that A, couldn't fly over land, and B, had very limited range and was kind of uncomfortable. So why not try something and start with having people pay much more money? Elon Musk with his cars, again, I, Adam, don't drive an electric car. I'm not preaching for electric cars. But Elon Musk started with expensive $100,000 cars. And it worked really well. And people were saying, no, people don't want to pay more. Some people want to. Once he did, and it got accepted, now he has the Model 3, which is maybe 30,000. We'll have the same thing in aviation. There are enough people who are willing to spend substantially more money to travel. It's ridiculous that you go from England to Prague and because you can go to a cheap bar there and you save enough money on booze, and the ticket price of going there was £10. I mean, you must be kidding. Why would that be the case? Why not provide people better service, faster service? I think it will be happening. It doesn't mean it immediately takes over. And again, I raise the issue of values. Planes that we have today will still last for quite a number of decades. But eventually, things will change.
Before we go on, I just want to encourage the audience. We're still open for questions. We're not going to carry on probably beyond the top of the hour. So please don't be slow submitting your questions. Adam, just staying on this issue of speed, just looking at what do you think is the multiple that you might see of a ticket price on a supersonic aircraft that the market would bear relative to, let's say, a business class fare on another airline or a standard airline as we know it today?
Well, again, it depends. What is the product? What is the speed? If it's a product like Concorde, which had limited range, that doesn't work. The whole idea is not for me to be able to fly maybe from here, Washington, to London and save a couple hours, but it's actually going to Tokyo or going to Beijing. That's where the savings come. It also depends how many seats you have, what service do you provide. So I think that in the beginning, you can have a multiple of at least double or triple business class fares, at least. And you start with a few of these, and immediately other people will start saying, you know what, here we have another idea, we have another product. And, you know, we do hope, I mean, United bought boom planes. We'll see how that goes. There will be additional players in it. And by the way, Blake, the founder of Boom, was kind of annoyed at me when I was interviewed by some journalist and said, I wouldn't invest my money in it. Doesn't mean I don't believe in the product. It's just, I don't make the decisions on investment, and I don't make big chances. I don't take big chances. But yeah, I believe it will happen, and I hope that United and Boom succeed, and I hope there will be additional products and additional airlines, and it all will be good. And I don't have to spend 18 hours flying to China.
I understand. Adam, there's a question here from Jeff. It's a bit on the technical side, but allow me to read it. And this is his wording. I've been a member of ISTAT for years and have always been interested in the Certified Appraiser program. If I understand correctly, it's not relevant to my current and historical roles, as the appraiser program is geared towards in-service aircraft. A lot of ISTAT members are the same as me, focusing on end-of-life aircraft, that is. I have been appraising airframes and engines for years for the purpose of disassembly and resale. Will ISTAT incorporate this into the appraiser program? If not, what can I do to support the full life cycle of aircraft being incorporated into the program? Just, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, interesting question. Thank you for asking. I'm not an appraiser. Avitas has 4 senior certified appraisers, a whole bunch of certified appraisers. And ISTAT has a number of people who deal with it, Bryson and
Yes.
Jeff, who actually is a full-time employee of ISTAT, who run these programs. So you can contact them, but I know that we at Avitas, we don't do just values of aircraft. We do also salvage values, part out values. So, and of it exists. There are methodologies, people do it. I don't know if you have different exams for it at ISTAT, but what you said is a fact of life. Yes, people do it, and people use inventories to get financing. So and have somebody provide the value of these parts. So all of this exists.
Right. Thank you, Adam. Just jumping back to questions from the audience live today. Just wondering what your view is around the issue of traffic growth, cost of travel, aircraft demand, but in particular with a sort of the background thought of ESG. And do you see ESG as potentially being a constraint on growth and therefore presenting a challenge to future demand for narrow-body aircraft?
Definitely ESG in the short term will have an impact of increasing the cost of flying. There's no doubt in my mind that this will have to happen. On the other hand, I mean, this is on one side. On the other hand, it pushes manufacturers to work harder on new technologies. So in the longer run, again, being an optimist, I believe that more people working on the new products and solving the problems that we have today will result in better products, more economic products, and provide a better opportunity for people to travel. I mean, when you think about it, Renaissance happened after the Dark Ages. After World War II, which was an incredible disaster in human history, in terms of aviation, we had jets, we had radar, we had a whole bunch of changes. So making things tougher leads us to better solutions. And that's kind of like whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger. The famous philosopher Kelly Clarkson, who sang about it, and then Friedrich Nietzsche 100 years earlier wrote about it. But yeah, I think that ESG concerns will change reality and will make things tougher in the short term, but in the longer run, they will transform human life in a very positive way. And I can't wait for it to fly new planes that don't pollute the environment.
Just to remind the audience, we've got no more than 10 minutes to go. So there's 2 questions remaining. And if you have anything quick, please don't be shy asking it. Adam, the second last question we have at the moment. So if you think of the market where we have the A321neo, the 737 or the MAX 10 on one side, we have the A330neo and the 787-800 on the other side. I suppose though that gap between the large narrow body, small wide body has closed somewhat over the, let's say, the last decade or so.
Yes.
What's your view on the middle of the market? And is there going to be enough of a gap or opportunity there for a whole new aircraft?
It's interesting because number of years ago, I was a very strong believer in it. And I believe that, yes, the NMA should happen because there is a gap. And, you know, a plane that is 250 seats, 5,000 miles, nautical miles, maybe a little wide body was the right way to go. And I don't know for a fact, but Boeing made sounds like they are moving in that direction, and obviously Airbus did the same. Reality changed now, and if you come up with a new product, you have to think about the ESG implications, because you have to think, yes, the plane will work now, but will you have a way to go around the environmental impact in 10, 15 years?
Yes.
So it becomes more complicated. It gives us in the industry opportunities to come up with more revolutionary ideas. I think it's only goodness. It's hard on the engineers, but they love working hard, I hope. That's what they tell me, so it must be true. That's, by the way, why I never became an engineer. My parents were engineers, and they were very disappointed that I became an economist.
Yes. Did they know it to be referenced as the dismal science when you told them you were doing economics, or they?
No, they would tell their friends, it's okay, he'll grow up. Didn't happen yet. Maybe.
I was going to say that they were optimists, but good for them. Now, look, Adam, as I said at the beginning, you've made some great calls on the oil price over the years. We certainly can't let you go without asking you what your current sentiments are, and do you have an outlook for 2022?
Not just oil, right? Life.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that too. Yeah.
Or were you asking oil?
Oil specifically, but if you want to get into interest rates and share markets and give us a good stock tip, I'd take that.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Oil prices are higher than they were, and they will continue for some time, but they are not going to go to the $100 level where they were before. And the main reason is when oil prices go up, what happens? People look for oil. They do more fracking. They spend more money on it. And then more, because we know that there's plenty of oil in the world. Right now, do you want to spend money on looking for oil when you know that the industry is kind of dead. And in 20, 30 years, nobody will want the dirty stuff that is underground. So why should you spend money on it? So you don't have the immediate reaction where we send rednecks from Texas to North Dakota to destroy the environment and get some more, through fracking, get some more oil. That's not happening right now. But in the longer run, we know that oil prices, not we know, I, Adam, believe that oil prices will never go up to the levels of $150 that we had before. And people who were buying planes with the assumption that $150 and above will be the norm didn't make a lot of money. They should have listened. A big part of what else happens in 22 depends on the virus. And there's a bigger power than us that decides this. We don't know which way the viruses will go. We actually don't know. So it's experimenting, and that's what I said. This is a time for experimentation, of trying new things. And if you have the right product, the right idea, and are lucky, more power to you. Next time you see me, you can get me some chocolates.
And due reward. So look, I think on that note, Adam, we should extend a very significant and large sort of thank you to you for your time. Appreciate you being willing to take questions from the audience as you have done, and provide extensive thoughts on such a broad range of topics. So very much appreciated, and it just adds a good depth to our library of learning labs that we've been able to create over the last year or so. With that, we'll bring things to a close. I want to thank everybody for joining us live on the audience today. Please look out for the recording, or share the links with your colleagues and friends around the industry. We have quite a bit of other content in the pipeline for you over the balance of the month and into next year. So please help share and advertise what ISTAT is doing online. And we would love to hear it or receive any feedback at istat@istat.org on any suggestions or future topics that you'd like us to bring up. So thank you very much, and wish you all a very successful day ahead. Thank you again, Adam.
Happy holidays, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you. That's the end of today's session.